tuned to Evergreen Media Network. I am Cindy Schwartz. This is the Patient Partner Show. We are broadcast on 107.9 FM, and we are also podcast on Spreaker. Jeannie Roller, my co-host, is with me today. We're talking about, Jeannie, your topic, standard of care. What does that mean? I mean, do we actually have that written down somewhere? Can we look it up? What is the standard of care across the board in a medical setting, and what is the definition of it? I mean, can people ask what's going to happen? We found that you cannot do that with people that we've talked with, and I've had those terminology, also the gold standard of care, thrown at me about different procedures, and you have to wonder why that umbrella clause is being given to you when you're not really being told a whole lot of things that's going to happen. Anyway, what do you think, Jeannie?
Right. Well, standard of care, as I have found out, is a legal term. It's not a medical term. Even the government agency says standard of care varies from area to area. And it is, you can think of it as what is reasonable. Well, reasonable has a broad meaning because depending upon the area you're in, the educational level of the person that is giving you the care, it can be very great from one end to the other. And on medical malpractice, all they have to do is just barely be within that range, even though it may not have been the best care, and for a doctor to say, I did the standard of care. So, I mean, it is very confusing for a patient because we as patients, we don't get to see what is the standard of care. When you read the hospital literature, there is nothing there that says this is our standard of care, except we give great care. Well, what is great care? Define that for me, because you don't know. As I said, standard of care doesn't have to be the best care. It can be just barely getting good enough care. And it is basically up to the doctor to define what they think is that standard of care, or to the hospital system. So it is really rough to figure out if you are getting the standard of care. Now, I found that the UK, United Kingdom, England, they actually go a little bit further, and they define standard of care by 7 different things. Okay. Person-centered care. You must have treatment that is tailored to you, the patient, and meets your needs and preferences. I've never seen that here. You must have dignity and respect. You must give consent. You must be kept safe. You must be safeguarded from abuse. You must be given food and drink. The premises and equipment have to be in good, safe working order, and you have to be able to make complaints. Now, that's what they define what makes up good standard of care in general. In the U.S., it is very sketchy. Standard of care can differ from New York City to Indianapolis to California, and from the north to the south. It just depends on where you're at. The smaller hospitals, I imagine, probably may have a less standard of care because they don't have all the fancy equipment, the latest and the newest, and they may not be attracting all the hotshot doctors.
Yeah, I'd have to disagree about that because I've been to smaller hospitals and the care is actually better than some of the bigger hospitals. But I want to say some of those things that you have mentioned are listed in certain facilities' patient rights. Right. So maybe they don't call it standard of care per se. Yeah, but I mean, is it really being carried out?
But yeah, when it's violated, there's nothing done about it. And that's the thing. But like a standard of care that I want to know about is when I go in for an operation, what happens to me from beginning to end?
I don't think you're ever going to get that story. That's the sad thing about it, is we've asked that question so many times, and so many people on this podcast have asked similar questions, and that's the gray area. We don't know what to do. I mean, it's certainly one doctor cannot do exactly or doesn't exactly do that specific operation as the next doctor because of whatever reason. But there should be some kind of umbrella thing again that says, okay, this is what's most likely going to happen. And I don't see that being told to a lot of people going into surgery myself. I think it's still back on the trust issue where, well, we're in charge, so don't worry, we gotcha kind of thing. And then just, my opinion, do what they do.
Right. And there are different hospital accreditation places such as Joint Commission, but you pay to belong to that, and they have their standards of care. And I found one, and it said particularly, you're supposed to go over, make sure you have the right site before the procedure starts.
Yeah.
The consent forms are all supposed to be signed. The timeout should be with the surgeon present, the one doing the procedure, the main person in charge. Well, but when those are violated, and when we contacted the Joint Commission, they didn't really seem to care because they don't talk to, from what I encountered, they don't talk to patients about these issues. They go to the hospitals and get their information from them. So to me, we need a government accreditation and national standards that each hospital has to follow. Like, they have to do this, they have to do that. And to me, that would be more reasonable, because then I, as a patient, would know that in Indiana, I would get the same care even if I went to Nebraska, that I would consider the same standard of care to be nationwide. I wouldn't have to worry. And to me, it just seems like a better idea instead of, I hope they're not going to harm me.
Well, I think some of that, doesn't that fall on Medicare's shoulders, that they're kind of the benchmark, the gatekeeper for a lot of this stuff, and then the rest of the insurance companies and that follow suit for supposedly, in my opinion, following up on complaints or, just accreditations and stuff like that. And you're right. I mean, these certain hospital systems or whatever, they do pay for accreditation. They do pay for, certification and things like that. And I know that I've, in instances, talked with some of those accreditation companies, and it's like once every 3 years they do they do their certification. So, I mean, that's a long time, in my opinion, in between certifications and accreditations. And then in other people, they quake in their wake that you mention the names of these, and it's like, don't do anything because, they're governed by so-and-so and they've got that accreditation, so, they're up to speed. But, I mean, is it really? I mean, we do need that. You're absolutely right. You have my vote on that. But how does that happen? And when do we look into this? On another podcast, we're talking about the mental health. So when do we look into all of this? How many people have to die for someone to address how horrific some of this mental health care doesn't exist? It's the same as this. Why is it? It's like a snowball effect here. It's just keep going on. And who's going to put the brakes on where people really are getting decent care? We complain about it all the time. The patients do, the doctors do, the nurses do, and I don't get what the problem is. I mean, it's almost like a puppet kind of string that people are pulling somewhere, and everybody jumps through the hoops. I don't get it. It's all we can do is keep bringing it to light.
Right. Well, in my opinion, once you've been harmed, they don't want to hear from you. No one wants to hear from you. So I think that the government and these accreditation places, they need to talk to the patients. The patients are the ones who can tell them what actually happened and go from there. I mean, to me, that seems like if you really want to know if patients are getting the best of care, then talk to the patients too. You have to.
Yeah, that's one side of
not only talk to the health providers, but you have to talk to the patients.
Yeah, that's one side of it is one side of the coin. It's not all the sides of the coin, but it's one side of it. Stay tuned to Evergreen Media Network.